Class chapter 15 is about the preparation of your consolidated financial statement subsequent to the date of acquisition. So the main area of focus here, class, would be on the preparation of the operations of the parent and the subsidiary as a single entity, or simply our concern here would be on the preparation of the financial statements to reflect the operations of the consolidated entity. As I've told you before, class, basically in a stock acquisition class, the acquiree, the subsidiary will survive. So the subsidiary will continue to operate, the parent will continue to operate. But aside from these two, there will now be a third entity, which we'll refer to as the consolidated entity. And the parent will prepare its own financial statements. The subsidiary will prepare its financial statements. Following the separate entity principle in accounting, there is a need to prepare also a separate financial statement for the third entity or for the consolidated entity. But as I also told you before, the consolidated entity does not maintain its own records, does not maintain its own books. So what does the consolidated entity do? What does the consolidator do, class? The consolidator will rely on the financial statements of the subsidiary and rely on the financial statements of the parent, combine the two so that it will be able to prepare the consolidated financial statements. And there are challenges, class. There are challenges in the preparation of the consolidated financial statements because the values used by the subsidiary, class, may not be the same values that will be adopted by the consolidated entity. For example, in the books of the subsidiary, you have a property that's worth 100,000, but at the date of acquisition, the value of the, what asset did I mention, class? Did I say equipment? Let's say equipment in the books of the subsidiary is 100, but at the date of acquisition, it was given an assessed, given a fair value of 120. Now, in the books of the subsidiary, class, that equipment will be depreciated based on the cost of 100,000. Okay? So when you look at the income statement of the subsidiary, the depreciation expense there will be based on 100,000. But for the consolidated financial statements, class, the consolidated entity will depreciate that asset based on 120,000, the fair value at the date of acquisition. So what do I mean? The depreciation expense that is reported by the subsidiary will not be adopted by the consolidated entity. Because in the eyes of the consolidated entity, the depreciable cost of the asset is 120, but in the records of the subsidiary, it is only 100. And then that is where the challenge lies, class. We will try to reconcile the amounts that will be reported by the consolidated entity and the amounts that are reported by the subsidiary. Another source of challenge, class, would be on your NCI. Diba, as part of our computation of goodwill, we have always computed also for your non-controlling interest in case it is not given. Okay, but you will have to understand, class, that the balance of your NCI is not constant. Okay, and depending on the operations, the result of the operations of the subsidiary, the balance of your NCI will fluctuate. And if your NCI will fluctuate, then of course, it will have an effect in the computation of your total shareholders' equity. Because again, one of the things you will have to remember is that in computing for your total shareholders' equity, do not forget to include your NCI. But why is it a bigger challenge for financial statements subsequent to the date of acquisition, class? Your NCI at the date of acquisition may not be the same anymore for the subsequent periods. And all these things would be affected by the income or loss of the subsidiaries. As to the other things that are sources of challenge, class, we'll just deal with them as we come across them in the multiple choice problem. In the first MCQ, class, this is not something new. We can answer this without learning anything new for this chapter, class. The first question is on the December. This is already December 31. 2017. Okay. First, Puzon purchased 80% of Santos Company's outstanding common stock for 260,000, 60,000 above the underlying book value on January 2, 2017. The fair value of Santos's net assets approximated their book value on December 31, 20. On December 31, 2017, consolidated statement of financial position, non-controlling interest would be. First, let's try to solve for the initial balance class. The 60,000 above the underlying book value class just tells us of the difference between the book value and the fair value. But since the problem tells us that the fair value of the net assets approximated the book value, that would mean that the 60,000 here would all go to your goodwill, but that is not what is being asked. We're asked to solve for the NCI. So what do we normally do? We get the consideration. The consideration is 260,000. And then divide it by 80%. Okay. So 260,000 divided by 80%, how much would that give you, class? 325,000. So since there is an excess of 60,000, class, and none of the excess is attributable to any of the assets or liabilities, that means the 60,000 here would represent the resulting goodwill, class. So if your goodwill is 300, if your total value of the company is, how much was it? Was it 325? 325, and then the resulting goodwill is 60. How much then must be the value, the fair value of the net assets? It would be 260,000 as well. And if you complete the table, class, if the value of the company as a whole is 325 and the consideration is 260, that means the value that is that will be assigned to your NCI would be 65,000. Okay. And there being no other information, the answer here would just be 65,000. Okay, and then there will be no need to make adjustments because there is no difference between the fair value of the net assets of the subsidiary with its book value. Because one of the biggest reasons for the need to make adjustments to your NCI, class, is if there are differences between the fair value of the net assets and their book value at the date of acquisition. But we'll elaborate on that one as we encounter more problems. 15-2, Person Incorporated purchased 80% of Season voting common stock for 260. Again, 60,000 above the underlying book value. Any excess is amortized over 10 years. What is the effect of the excess on the 2017 consolidated comprehensive income? Class, CI here, class, stands for comprehensive income. Here, this is different from problem 15-1, class, because it tells you that the excess will have to be amortized. This means that the excess is attributable to another asset, class. That means the fair value of one asset perhaps is greater than its book value by 60,000. In problem 15-1, all the assets and liabilities have equal fair value and book value, so there is nothing to amortize. Here, the entire 60,000 will have to be amortized. So if you're asked in this problem, the goodwill is 0. In 15-2, goodwill is 0 because all the excess is attributable to a difference between the fair value and the book value, which must be amortized over 10 years. To quickly answer this question, class, all you have to do is to divide 60,000 by 10 years because you will amortize or spread out the excess over using straight line over the next 10 years. So every year there will be a 6,000 class. And the answer here will be a decrease of 6,000. Now, how do we explain this one? again, the answer there is delta, a decrease of 6,000. So basically, what's happening in problem 15-2? You have an asset class that has a value whose fair value is greater than its book value by 60,000. So for example, can I have a scratch paper? Thank you. I'll try to simplify the explanation first since the problem is very brief, class. For example, in the books of the subsidiary class, the carrying amount of a depreciable asset is 300,000. If it says that the excess is to be amortized over 10 years, that means the underlying asset whose fair value is different than its book value has a remaining life of 10 years. So just for the sake of example, the subsidiary has an asset with a carrying amount of 300,000 and it has a remaining useful life of 10 years. But since the problem tells us that there is a 60,000 excess that is attributable to this asset, that would mean the fair value of this asset of the subsidiary at the date of acquisition was 360. Okay? But when you look at the records of the subsidiary, the amount that you would see would be 300,000. But again, the consolidated entity, which is another entity in accounting class, in the eyes of the consolidated entity, this asset does not have a value of 300. It has a value of 360. So when you look at the records of the subsidiary class, the carrying amount is 300,000 and the annual depreciation would be 30,000. How did we get 30,000? Assuming no residual value, or even if there is, the depreciable amount will just be the 300 for purposes of this illustration. So every year there will be a depreciation of 30,000. Okay, and that is what will be reported by the subsidiary. And how did we get 30,000? 300,000 divided by 10. Okay, now here comes the consolidated entity class. Since the consolidated entity does not maintain its own books, what will the consolidated entity do? It will have to look at the financial statements of the subsidiary. But when the consolidated entity looks at the financial statements of the consolidated entity, what will it see? It will only see a depreciation expense of 30,000. Okay? But if you ask the consolidated entity, how much will be the depreciation on this asset? In the eyes of the consolidated entity class, the depreciation expense would be 36,000. The consolidated entity does not agree that the value of the asset is 300. In the eyes of the consolidated entity, the value of the asset is 360. So in the eyes of the consolidated entity, the depreciation expense would be 36,000. But when it looks at the records of the subsidiary, it sees 30,000. So what will the consolidated entity say? I do not agree. Your depreciation expense is understated by 6,000. Okay? So that is where the 6,000 comes from. Basically, the difference in the amounts reported by the subsidiary and the amount that will be reported by the consolidated entity. Okay, now, but why are we talking about depreciation expense? Because this would be the root cause of the difference in their comprehensive income class. Okay, let's say, for example, very simple illustration lang. Total revenues of the subsidiary class is 1 million. And then total expenses, everything is 800,000. So there will be a difference, there will be a net income of, or comprehensive income of 200,000. Okay? Now, these 800,000 total expenses, again, these are all assumed class. Okay? The 800,000 here already includes the depreciation expense of 30,000. Okay? So, when the consolidated entity looks at this one, the consolidated entity would say, I do not agree. Your total revenue may be 1 million, but your total expenses should be 806,000. Okay? Why is it only 800,000? Because your depreciation expense was only 30,000. But in the eyes of the consolidated entity, the correct depreciation expense should be 36. So you replace the 30 by 36. In the eyes of the consolidated entity, the total revenue would be, total expenses would be 806. So that means the net income, the comprehensive income of the subsidiary in the eyes of the consolidated entity would be 194. Okay? So because of the difference in the fair value and the book value class, the consolidated entity will not agree with the amount reported by the subsidiary. Okay, and what will the consolidated entity do? It will decrease it by 6,000. Okay, so again, this is what will happen, Klasa. You will have to amortize the excess, and what will be the effect of the excess? The amortization of the excess will result in a decrease in the consolidated comprehensive income. But again, what's happening behind the scenes? This is what is happening, class. There's a disagreement as to the value of the asset, resulting in a disagreement in the value of the depreciation expense, thereby a disagreement in the amount of income of the subsidiary. Now, in the preparation of your consolidated financial statements, who will prevail? The point of view of the consolidated entity or the amount reported by the subsidiary class? In the preparation of the consolidated FS, whose opinion will prevail? Of course, it will be that of the consolidated entity. So to adjust the income reported by the subsidiary, there will be an adjustment on the excess in the amount of 6,000. Okay? The amortization of the excess will lead to a decrease in an adjustment to the income, normally in a decreased class. Okay? That's why the answer here would be letter D. But if you forget this one, how did we answer 15-2? You simply divide by 60 by 10, and that will give you 6. We'll have more illustrations on this one later. 15-3. If a wholly owned subsidiary's comprehensive income was 150,000 and the subsidiary declared dividends of 80,000, and the depreciation and amortization of current fair value excess was 20,000, the non-controlling interest in the comprehensive income of the subsidiary under the cost method of accounting is, so basically you just ask how much is the share of the NCI class, because that's what will happen, class. The subsidiary will report an income, okay, but who will have claims over the income of the subsidiary? It will be two groups: the controlling interest and the non-controlling interest. They will split the income. The changes in the share of the controlling interest will have an effect on the income of the parent, while the share of the non-controlling interest will have an impact on the balance of your NCI. And this is why, as I mentioned earlier, the balances of your NCI will not remain constant, because again, it would be adjusted by the results of the operations of the subsidiary. But that will be the case, class. That will be the case if you use the equity method. If you use the cost method, class, no adjustments to your investment in subsidiary, no adjustments in your NCI. That is why the answer here, class, would just be 0, class. By the way, how much is the control? No. There's no controlling interest in the first place because, because this is a wholly owned subsidiary. So there is no NCI in the first place. That's why the answer here is 0. Let's proceed to problem 15-4. Here you now have two methods, the cost method and the equity method. What's the question? Under the cost and equity method, what will be the balance of the investment in subsidiary? Class, this is in the books of the parent. You only see the investment in subsidiary in the books of the parent. Okay, this is not for the consolidated financial statements. On January 2, 2017, Paz Corporation acquired 60% of the outstanding shares of Sin Company for 500,000. In addition, Paz paid acquisition-related costs of 40,000. The book and fair values of these shares was 480,000. Any excess of the investment cost over the book value of interest acquired has a maximum life of 20 years. For 2017, Scene Company reported consolidated income of 200,000 and paid dividends of 80,000. Under the cost and equity methods, the balance of the investment. Okay. So, first class, what's the treatment of the 40,000 class? Will this go to your investment in subsidiary? Will this be capitalized as part of the cost of your investment in subsidiary? No, the 40,000 will be expensed. Okay. Now, how much is the initial cost of the investment in subsidiary? How much was the consideration? It is 500,000. Okay, it is 500,000. Now, very important but very simple theory class. If you use the cost model class, if you use the cost method, the balance of your investment in subsidiary will remain constant. So whether or not the subsidiary is profitable, whether or not the subsidiary declares dividends, the balance of your investment in subsidiary under the cost method will remain the same at the date of acquisition. Okay, this is the same as the cost model you use for your PPE and your other investments class. So the answer here would be, for cost method, it will simply be 500,000. And since there's only 500,000 choices, we know that the answer here will be letter C. But let's try to come up with the correct answer. Okay. By the way, again, what's the theory I just mentioned, class? If you use cost method, the balance of your investment in subsidiary will remain constant, equal to the acquisition cost. Exemption. When will there be a change in your balance for your investment in subsidiary? Number one, obviously, for all assets maintained using the cost method class, you will change its carrying amount if it starts with letter I, impaired. You will write down the balance if the asset is impaired. Okay, if the fair value is lesser, let's say 400,000, you will have to recognize an impairment loss. Second, when will your investment in subsidiary possibly go down, class? Under the cost method, aside from impairment, when will it go down? It can go down if you receive liquidating dividends. What are liquidating dividends, class? Liquidating dividends are already a return of your investment. So since it is a return of investment, class, it understandably will result in a decrease in your investment account. But if it's just a regular dividend, class, it will just the dividend you will receive will just be reported as a dividend income. But again, if it's a liquidating dividend, it will already be charged directly to your investment cost. But in this problem, we do not have any impairment. We also do not have any liquidating dividend. That's why it will remain at 500,000. But under the equity method, class, and I always try to remind students that the equity method is very easy. It's just the same as your basic accounting. In your equity account, in your owner's equity account, what are the 4 transactions that will affect the equity, class? Hopefully those who are under me in home office and branch can remember. What are the 4 things that will affect your equity accounts? Withdrawal. That's the same. What's the opposite of withdrawal? Investments. And when else will your home office account increase or decrease? Income of the branch. So plus share in the profit of the branch, plus or minus the loss of the branch. Investment in branch. What are the 4 transactions that will affect your investment in branch? Additional investments, withdrawals, and profit of the branch or minus loss of the branch. Because again, what method is used to maintain the investment in branch? Equity method. The same will happen for your investment in subsidiary. So meaning, if you make an additional investment, this will also apply for the cost method. your investment balance will increase if you have additional investments. So the investment in subsidiary will increase if you make investments. You make decrease with withdrawal, increase for the profit of the subsidiary. We're talking about subsidiaries now. And then minus loss of the subsidiary. Going back to investment in subsidiary, you make investments, increase investment in subsidiary. Sorry, branch. Going back to branch. If you make additional investments, increase investment in branch. If you take away something from the branch, decrease investment in branch. If the branch reports a profit, increase investment in branch. If the branch reports a loss, decrease investment in branch. The same will happen to your investment in subsidiary. If you make additional investment, how do you do that? If you acquire additional shares. And then withdrawal, what will be the form of withdrawal here? If you will receive dividends class. Okay? If you receive dividends, if you receive from dividends from the subsidiary, we will treat that as a withdrawal, and that will decrease your investment in subsidiary. Now, how is this different from the cost method? What do you do? I mentioned this earlier. What do you do if you receive dividends from the subsidiary class and you use the cost method? The investment in subsidiary will not be touched. You will just recognize dividend income. But if you use the equity method, if you receive dividends, it will not be reported as an income class. It will not be reported as an income. It will be treated as a return of investment or a withdrawal, thereby decreasing your investment in subsidiary. Now, it will also be increased by the profit. It will be decreased by the loss. In branch class, in home office and branch accounting, the branch reports a profit of 100,000. Do we increase the investment in branch by 100,000? Yes. Because basically the home office owns the entirety of the branch. But here, subsidiary class, you own only 80% of the subsidiary. The subsidiary reports a profit of 100,000. Are you going to increase the investment in subsidiary by 100,000? No. You only increase the investment in subsidiary by your share in the profit of the subsidiary. In our example, how much is the profit of the subsidiary? 100. How much is your share in the 100,000? Only 80% or equivalent to 80,000. So by how much will you increase the investment in subsidiary account? You'll only increase it by 80,000. Okay? I hope you see the difference. I hope you see the similarities first, and I hope you understand why there will be differences. But what if it's a wholly owned subsidiary class? What if it's a wholly owned subsidiary? Then obviously your share would be the entire profit or loss of the subsidiary. Okay? So, but again, if you're taking down notes, the amount that you will have to add or deduct will just be your share, not the entire profit of the subsidiary. That's your share in the profit or your share in the loss. So 4 things will affect the investment in subsidiary account if you use the equity method. Okay. It will increase with investments, decrease with withdrawal, which will be in the form of dividends, and then it will increase in your share in the profit, and then decrease for your share in the loss. Okay. But very quickly lang, let's compare na lang the equity and the cost. Under the equity and the cost model class, if you make additional investments, the investment account will increase. Okay? Diba we said under the cost method, it will remain constant. And I've given you the exemptions, the 2 instances wherein it will decrease. Obviously, your investment account can also increase even if you're using the cost method if you make additional investment. Okay? So that means for cost and equity class, they will have the same treatment. Cost method, additional investments will be added. Equity method, additional investments will be added. Okay? Next, dividends. What do you do? What do you do under the cost method? You will ignore cost method. You will ignore, but report as income. Okay, but under the equity method, no income, but it will result in an increase in your investment account. Okay, then profit of the subsidiary, ignored under the cost method, ignored under the share in loss will also be ignored. But under the equity method, sharing profit will be addition to your investment in subsidiary, while a share in loss will be a deduction. We're talking about the effects on the investment in subsidiary. Under the cost method, for these four transactions, only one will affect the investment in subsidiary account, and that is your additional investment. Here, what if there are dividends? No effect on investment in subsidiary, but you will have to report an income, dividend income. What if the subsidiary reports a profit or loss? Ignored by the parent in accounting for the investment in subsidiary. But for equity method plus, the dividends class should be minus. Okay. Increased by additional investments, increased by share in profit, decreased by dividends and share in losses. So if you will be asked, class, how much is your dividend income under the equity method? Your answer should be 0. How much is your dividend income if the equity method is used? Your answer should be 0. When will dividend income arise? Only if you're using the cost method. Let's try to apply everything we've talked about. The initial balance would be, is it the 500 class? What else happened here? Do we have withdrawals in the form of dividends? Past paid acquisition. Again, ignore the 40,000. That will be reported as an expense. Subsidiary reported income of 200 and paid dividends of 80. And what's the effect of the dividends to your investment in subsidiary account under the equity method? Decrease. So do we deduct the entire 80,000? No, because is this wholly owned? No. You only deduct your share. Only deduct your share, class. You will not receive the entire 60. You will only not receive the entire 80. You will only get 60% of the 80,000. So you will, sorry class, 48,000. And then this would be deduct. Now what else happened? Did the subsidiary report a profit or a loss? CI, what does CI stand for? Comprehensive income. So that means the subsidiary reported a profit of 200,000. Do we add the entire 200,000? No, because again, we do not own, we are not entitled to the total income of the subsidiary because we are only an owner for 60%. So again, everything, class, only your share, only your share. But the problem, class, is, as I've mentioned earlier, it's possible that the consolidated entity will not agree with the amount reported by the subsidiary. How much income is reported by the subsidiary? It's 200,000. But in this case, the subsidiary, the parent, or sorry, the consolidated entity will not agree because in the eyes of the consolidated entity, the 200,000 is not correct. Why is it not correct? Because there is an excess between the fair value and the book value. What does the problem say? The book and fair value of these shares was 480. Any excess in investment has a maximum life of 20. Okay? Let's try to determine, class, what's happening here. The book and fair value of these shares was 480,000. any excess of the investment cost over the book value of interest acquired. Okay. Has a maximum life of 20 years. How much is the 60% of, how much is the difference? Pay dividends of 80 under the cost. Two-thirds. How much is the excess? The book and fair value of these shares was 480,000. How much is 480 times 60% class? 240, 288. So 288 would be the uh, proportionate share, and the difference is between 500. How much is 500 minus 288? 21, and then divide this by 212 divided by 20. How much is that? 10,000. 10,000. I don't think we'll be able to get an amount from the choices. 10,600. Deduct that from 200,000 plus 200,000 times 10,600. 189,400. 200,000 times minus 10,600. 189,400. This does not look good. Multiplied by 60%. How much is 189,400? How much? 640. So definitely it will not be in the choices. It's wrong. The book and fair value of these shares was 400. Now, I think that the difference is just the 20. 20, 20,000, 500 minus 480, the difference here would be 20,000. And then divided by 20 years, the amortization of the excess would just be 1,000 per year. But Sige lang. 200 minus 1 class, that's 199. How much is our share? Sige lang, help me here na lang class. 199 times 60%. 1. How much is 500 plus 119 400 minus 48? 5 400. This would be our answer. 571,400. So if this will come out, our answer would be 571,400. Let's have one more question. 15-5. What is the balance of your NCI? Class, your NCI class will just be treated the same way as your investment in subsidiary. Okay, it will decrease and increase in its share in the profit or loss of the subsidiary. Okay, so first, are we given with the initial balance of the NCI? At 75%, investment was counted for by the cost method. On January 2, 2017, Sol Company's identifiable net assets is 300,000. Comprehensive income is 160 during the year. Dividends was 60,000. There were no other intercompany transactions. Okay. First, solve for the initial balance of your NCI class. Consideration is how much? 270,000. Okay, and then divided by 75, will that be 360? And then the fair value of the net assets is 300. So that means the resulting goodwill is 60, and the value that will be assigned to your NCI would be 360 minus 270 would be 90. That will be the initial balance of your NCI. Okay, again, the NCI will be the same as your investment in subsidiary under the equity method. Okay. But going back to problem 15-3 class, the reason the answer there is 0, it's because it is a wholly owned subsidiary. Now going back, your initial balance would be 90. And what else will affect your NCI? Share in the profit and share in the dividends. How much dividends were given, class? 60. Do we deduct the entire 60? No, only the share of the NCI. Okay, so how much is the share of the NCI? 25%. How much is 25% of 60? How much? 15. 15,000. So deduct 15,000. Next, share in the profit. How much profit did the subsidiary report, class? 160. Do we add the entire 160? No, only the share of the NCI. How much is the share of the NCI? 25%. That would be 40,000. You add the 40. So you'll have 90 plus 40 minus 15. How much will that give you? 115. How much was it? 90 plus 40. Huh? What 75%? It would be 90 plus share in the profit first. Share in the profit would be 40,000. And then minus share in the dividends. How much dividends was declared? 60. And how much is our share? Sorry, class. The total dividends, class, is not 60. What did the problem say? Pat Corporation received 60. So that means the 60,000 is the share of the parent class. So that means the total dividends was 80. Was it 80? 60 divided by 75. It's 80. 80,000. Then that means the share of the subsidy of the NCI in the total dividend is 25% of 80. How much is 25% of 80? 20. So this would be minus 20. Because you get where we got the 20? What is the difference between this one and in the previous problem? In the previous problem, the 80,000 mentioned there was the total dividends paid by the subsidiary. But how were the dividends illustrated or presented in problem 15-5? It was stated as the amount received by the parent. So the 60,000 here is not the total dividends paid by the subsidiary. How much is the total dividends paid by the subsidiary, class? It's 80,000. And how did we get 80,000? 60,000 divided by 75%. Because if the parent received 60, that means its share must be 60. If its share is 60, then the total dividends must be 80. And that means the share of the non-controlling interest must be 20,000. Now, how much is 90 plus 40? 130 minus 20, which is, again, not in the choices. But what will be our answer? Our answer would still be 110,000. Now, class, very quickly lang, class. The 40,000. Why was our computation of the 40,000 very straightforward? Diba the 40,000 was just the 160 times 25%? Yes, because there was no disagreement for the income of the subsidiary. Okay, what I'm trying to say is that the consolidated entity agreed with the subsidiary that the income of the subsidiary is 160,000. While in 15-4 class, the consolidated entity does not agree that the income of the subsidiary is 200,000. Why? Because there are excess that will need to be amortized in 15-4. There's a difference between the excess, okay, between the fair value and the subsidiary. There will be a need to amortize the excess. But in problem 15-5, what did the problem say? That the book value and the fair value is already 300,000. It does not mention of any excess that needs to be amortized. Okay, but just expect moving forward that there will always be amortization of the excess. If I am to simplify, to limit one thing that you will need to remember or take away from tonight's class, number one, for your investment in subsidiary, if you're using the cost method, the balance will remain constant. The only instance it will change is if there are additional investments or if there is impairment or liquidating dividends. If it's investment in subsidiary under the equity method, you add investments, deduct share in dividends, add share in profits of the subsidiary, or deduct share in the loss of the subsidiary. The same would be the rule for your NCI. NCI plus additional investments, but that will rarely happen. What will normally happen for your NCI would be minus share in dividends plus share in the profit minus share in loss. If you can remember just those things from tonight, that would be enough, class. Okay? That would be all for tonight. We'll continue with this one on Tuesday. Then we'll have the exam on Thursday.